color bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old, meek and the bold. From every village town, can you hear the sound? Can you see the light through the dark? Merry, 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 merry Christmas. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. On this and on with that end, their joyful tone to every home.
Ho ho ho! Merry Christmas, everyone! Happy birthday to Eric Vierthaler. I'm going to review a movie he likes, which I just got done watching. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. This is my favorite Christmas movie. Okay, so you start off with a cartoon thing of Santa Claus, and then you go into this part. So it first starts off with Clark Griswold, the main character played by Chevy Chase, who is driving his family, his wife and kids, to a tree lot to get a Christmas tree. So, but there's a little trouble on the road because there's a guy riding his tail. Clark gets pissed off. He said, some jackass is riding my tail, and then they said, slow down, let him pass, and then the guy is about to bypass him. He honks and starts speeding up, and she said, Clark, don't provoke them. And he went, hey kids, look, a deer. And his wife Ellen and both of his kids look over, Audrey and Russ, and then he goes like that to the driver, and then the other two are looking at him, and then they brake right in front of him, and it's an icy road, and he goes, and Clark slams on the brakes because they slammed on the brake to, but he smiled, Clark did, when he looked back at his wife after they looked to see there was no deer. But then he stepped on the brake as soon as the car ahead of them stepped on the brake, and he went, pfft. His kids went like that, and then the passenger of the other car's like, or something like that. He starts laughing, and then Clark starts to speed up, and they're like, Clark, slow down. And he said, you want to ride behind someone who does something like that? We'll pull ahead of them, and we'll leave them safely behind us. Let's burn some dust here. Eat my rubber. And Russ is like, Dad, I think what you mean is burn rubber and eat my dust. And he said, whatever, Russ, whatever. And then he said, eat my road red liver lips. And then he pulls ahead of them, and he said, okay, that's enough of that. And then he goes ahead of them. But then he said, speaking of Christmas trees, kids, can you tell me what was the first tree display the White House was? And Russ said, Dad, they're back. And then they're like, Clark, stop it. I don't want to spend the holidays dead. Please, honey, I'll do the driving. And he's like, I'm in complete control. And then he got underneath a truck with logs, and they're like, we're trapped underneath the truck. And he said, do you honestly think I don't know that? And Audrey's like, come on, guys, don't fight. And then he finally goes out and goes like that, and then lands, and then it took him a while to go pick out the tree, but he said, and then he said, isn't it great? Isn't it beautiful, Audrey? And they said, she'll see it later, honey. Her eyes are frozen. And he said, this tree is a symbol of the Griswold family Christmas, because it was snowing or it was frozen outside. But the funny thing is, what he said was hilarious, because he said, Kith and Kim, this tree is a symbol of the Griswold family Christmas. And yeah, and then this is what Russ said, Dad, did you bring a saw? So he had to tear the whole part of the tree out. Then he's back home, and his neighbor, it was Todd. Let me see. Hold on. Todd and Margot Chester. Todd's like, Griswold, where you gonna, hey Griswold, where you gonna plant a tree that big? And he said, bend over and I'll show you. And he said, you got a lot of nerve talking to me like that, Griswold, or something like that. And he said, I wasn't talking to you. I was wondering if he was talking to Margot, but then he had a Jason Voorhees mask, and then he chainsawed the root part so it could fit, and he said, "That won't fit in our yard." That's what he said earlier. He said, "It's not going in our yard, Russ. It's going in our living room." So then, later, he cuts it and he says, "There's a lot of sap here. Hole, a lot of sap." Something like that. And then he's reading a magazine, even though part of his windows broke, and then he was reading a magazine and his fingers were getting stuck to everything in the magazine, and it got stuck to his wife Ellen's hair, got stuck to the lamp. It was hilarious. I seriously laugh every time I watch this. And then he goes into a store and sees Mary, and I think he kind of has the hots for her, and she's showing him everything, and she says, "I'm wearing something similar on underwear. Can't see the line, can you? Can't see the line." And then and then Clark looks over at Russ and says, "Can't see the line, can you, Russ?" And Russ is like, "Nope." And then he looks up at Mary, and then he looks at Russ like, "Russ?" It's like he's shocked that his son's right there. Just when he's talked to him. And then later he was putting up Christmas lights with, he had Russ unknot him, and then he was using a staple gun. And Margot Chester said, "I hope he falls and breaks his neck." And then Todd said, "I think he'll fall, but I don't think we're fortunate enough to have him break his neck." And then he was putting in the lights, and then he stapled his shirt or sweater to the roof or to the gutter. And then he was falling off the gutter, and then the part of the gutter flew into the Chester's house and broke everything. And he said, "Well, something had to have happened. Why is that wet?" "I don't know." But then they looked over at Clark's house, so it must have been Clark who caused the damage. So I have to do this a little bit because my eyes bug out a little bit. So later on, he wants all those lights to work. More of his family comes over. The only people who aren't over, I'll get to that in a minute. But then he's trying to get the lights to work. It didn't work, so then the next day, he's left up in the attic because it felt cold, so they shut it. And then Chevy Chase, Clark's walking around, bored, just smacking him in the face. That's my favorite part. He's like, "Poof, poof, poof," like 4 times, I think. And then he was left up in the attic, so he couldn't go shopping or eat lunch with them. So then they walked out. Everyone was gone except for Clark, I think. Yeah. So then he was watching a video on him being young or something, and then he walked out. He fell down later. Fell from the attic. And then he was putting up more of the lights, and I don't think they worked, but later they did. There was something to do with a button in the house, or something to do with the plug or the on in the button. It was like a lever. So then they put it together. It worked. Then it stopped. Worked again. Stopped. Then didn't. Then it worked finally, and everyone was celebrating. But the Chesters their carpet was ruined because they were doing stuff and those lights blinded them. Then the lights came off, then they effed up their carpet because they slipped and fell and everything. Alright, on to the next part. So, the person who just arrived was Eddie, played by Randy Quaid, who I've seen in the movie Kingpin with Woody Harrelson, where Woody Harrelson was playing his mentor, and Catherine. Catherine is related to Ellen. They're blood cousins, I think. They said cousin Eddie Johnson is related to Clark Griswold because Clark's wife, Ellen, is Eddie, and Eddie's wife, Catherine, are blood cousins. Alright. So Eddie comes to the house in his RV, which he said he borrowed off of a friend. They were all drinking eggnog, and then his dog Snots was drinking tree water. Then he told Snots to get out from there, so then Snots just ran into the kitchen, and then Clark and Eddie were talking about the RV. Alright. Next up, what happened was they were talking about... Let me see, what were they talking about? Well, days pass and he's over at his work later, and then he dropped off something for Frank Shirley, who was played by Brian Dole Murray, who was in Scrooge with Bill Murray and is Bill Murray's older brother. Alright. And actually, Randy Quaid worked with Bill Murray and Kingpin. So next up, what happens is he starts talking to his boss, Frank Shirley, and then he said, me and my wife made a present for you. And he said, have a present for you. And he said, leave it over with the others, Greaseball, instead of Griswold. And then he said, I hope my thing helps. And he said, I'm sure it did, Griswold. Now, if you please excuse me, I'm in the middle of a very important call. And then, they call... Yeah. So here's a funny part. He uses a metal plate, or like a thing for a sledge. So he goes down, Clark does, he's going with everyone, and he just goes, Whoom! It was so hilarious because you usually expect those things to just go like that, but it goes, Whoom! Even to a Walmart. Yeah, and then later, more of the family's coming, but then Eddie's toilet was full, so he said, Shitter was full! And then he's like, Merry Christmas! Shitter was full! To the Chesters, and then Todd Chester ran back into the house, but then they said, hold on. Hold on. And then they said, there's a gasoline leak, and he said, anyone who lights a match, something, he said something about lighting a match. If someone does that, they'll be in bad pain or something, or it'll blow up. I can't remember word for word, but then Aunt Bethany and Uncle Lewis went, and then Aunt Bethany wrapped up the cat. He said, she wrapped her cat up in this. And then they wrapped up the Jello too. And then the cat was chewing on the tree lights. And then they were all eating dinner. The turkey was kind of messed up. And they said, I told you we put it in too early. And they said, oh, it's just a little dry. It's fine. And then they were all eating it. It was kind of crunchy and it didn't look too good. Kind of looked a little messed up, but they were eating like Jello, bread, yams, I think, and other stuff. We don't eat turkey here on Christmas. We eat steak instead. Like the way I like it is steak and garlic, mashed potatoes, like potatoes with garlic in them. It's actually pretty good. And then next up, you go to Then next up, the cat died. They said, they had Jello on that table too. I like Jello. Then the cat passed away. He said, They had nine lives. That's what Eddie said. He split them all. And then next up, the tree got messed up by Uncle Lewis. The funny thing is the dog, Snots, was yakking on a bone. He said, he spit it up. And he said, maybe if you wouldn't feed him from the table, Eddie. And he said, nope. He just probably nosing through the trash. And then he went to the trash can. He looked in there. And they had to throw all the trash back in the garbage can. So next up, here it comes. So Clark gets his Christmas bonus from his work. He loses his temper because it was a Jelly of the Month club. He tore it up and threw it, and then put his eggnog in his cup and said, it's good, it's good, it's good. Then he started yelling about his boss, Frank Shirley, and then the tree he had was burnt down, and then I'll actually link what he said about his boss in the description bar below. And then his tree burnt down by Uncle Lewis, and they said, he's an old man, it might be his last Christmas. And he said, he keeps it up, it will be his last Christmas. He was smoking a cigar, and then he went on to go get another tree. So he cut down the tree, and it broke his neighbor's, the Chester's, window. And then she wants shut up, computer. He wanted Margot Chester wanted Todd Chester to go punch Clark in the face, and he said, I can't just go over to someone's house and punch him in the face. And she said, well, if you're not manly enough to put an end to the shit, I will. And then she went over to go punch Clark, but there was a squirrel in the house, and Snots, the dog, was chasing around. He chased it, got it outside, and then it attacked Margot, and then she punched Todd, and he fell over the couch. And the other thing was, Woody Harrelson, no, what am I thinking? Randy Quaid, who is Eddie, well, what Clark wanted for Christmas was he wanted his boss brought there with a big ribbon on his hand, and he was yelling about him and cussing about him. He wanted him right there. And then Eddie left. So Eddie drives back, and then Clark's reading a book to everyone. And then he saw Eddie come back, and he saw that Frank Shirley, his boss, was right there with him, and he said, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, Clark. You ready to do some kissing? And he said, and then they drove back, or the Helen, Frank Shirley's wife, called the police, and then they took her to the Griswold's house, and then they said add 20% because he said Carl instead of Clark. What you got last year, add 20%. So he gets the pool. He's gonna make the pool for everyone. And then he called, or the police arrived. They broke into the Chester's house by mistake, but then came into the Griswold's house. But then Frank Shirley told them that was a big misunderstanding with the Christmas bonus suspension and everything. And he said, that's pretty low, mister. If I had a rubber hose, I'd beat you. And he said, I changed my mind. I'm reinstating all the bonuses. And then they said, look. And they saw a shooting star. And he said, maybe it's Santa's sleigh. That's the Christmas star. And he said, that ain't no Christmas star, Clark. It's a sewage in a gas leak. Don't put that out! Because he had a match. And then he put it out. And then big explosion from what Eddie did with his shitter was full thing with his toilet. Pardon the language. That's what he said twice. And then they started singing the Star Spangled Banner. And that's where the movie ended. For a Christmas movie, I give this a 10 out of 10. You know how I actually found out about this movie? Ironically, was Eric Vierthaler, because he reviewed it, and then I rented this from Netflix, and I bought it a couple days later. It was only $10 at the Walmart that I live near. Yeah, so it was like $10 at Walmart. If I were you, I would buy this without even renting it because it's hilarious. I love this movie so much. It's my favorite Christmas movie. My second favorite is probably The Grinch. Somewhere around there. Well, anyways, stay up to date. Subscribe. Eric reviewed this back in 2010, so then I rented it. Alright, thank you for watching. Alright, bye. Peace. Merry Christmas. Happy birthday, Eric. Bye. Peace.